On today's Locked on Thunder podcast, the Oklahoma City Thunder beat the Atlanta Hawks with a wire-to-wire win. Lou Dort gets back on fire. The starting lineup did change and so much more.
You are Locked on Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked on Thunder podcast, on the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and beat writer for Thunder on SI, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. On today's show, we're joined by Brandan Rahbar, DailyThunder.com, 1077 The Franchise, OKC Dream Team, to discuss the Thunder beating the Atlanta Hawks in a wire-to-wire win. Brandan, how you doing today?
It's a Friday night. Got to watch some Thunder basketball. Got to catch up on a couple of shows. I'm looking forward to the weekend.
Well, what show are you currently watching?
So I'm watching Severance. I don't know if you're caught up. I won't, no spoilers, but it's excellent. White Lotus. And there's a show on Hulu called Paradise. It's a good one. It's underrated. Don't see many people talking about it, but I recommend it.
Well, go check out that show to see if Brandan has good taste in uncut hidden gems of the streaming world. I just finished Righteous Gemstones. It's a really hilarious series, and I'm catching up on Love Is Blind, which the new episodes dropped today. So after we finish this pod, I'm going to go see the new episodes. Really excited for that. But first, we have a game to talk about, Brandan, in which the Thunder win 135-119, a wire-to-wire win, never trailed, never tied. The Thunder once led by 27 points. The biggest news of the game happened before the ball was ever tipped off in the air, and there we were, right? It happened with the starting five, where Isaiah Hartenstein went to the bench, his first game coming off the pine, and Chet Holmgren remained in the starting five next to Shea, Dort, Dub, and Cason Wallace. Well, what did you think when that starting lineup was posted? What did you think of that starting lineup getting the Thunder off to a good start?
It reminded me of a conversation you and me had. I can't remember if it was on Locked On or if it was on Dream Team or on both, but the last time we were together, we kind of talked about the double bigs and if that was going to be a permanent fixture moving forward, if they would switch it up once the playoffs came around or how that would go. And here we go. Cason Wallace gets the start. And we talked about Cason Wallace. If there were to be a shift, if Hartenstein were to go to the bench, that it made sense that Wallace would take that spot. And he did. I was a little surprised. I thought that, we'd continue seeing double bigs for quite a while, if not for the rest of the season, just to get those data points, just to get that lineup data. Mark likes to see, these lineups, and he wants more than just the small sample size. But I think it was a good change, just to keep things fresh and exciting and mysterious. You never know, what starting lineup you're going to get now. I wouldn't be surprised if they go back to double bigs once Chet's healthy. We'll get to that next game out, that everybody's healthy. I also wouldn't be surprised to see Wallace continue starting for the rest of the way and see Hartenstein continue to come off the bench. It's like a box of chocolates, the Thunder starting lineup, Rylan.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to get at this point. I was surprised that it happened. And then, then you think about it. And when they were healthy, they still got to their double big stuff. And even though independently, you know what you have whenever you have one center on the floor, and you know what you have whenever you have the small ball lineups out there, and you don't know exactly what you have with double bigs, you also, as we mentioned, that this was the first time Hartenstein came off the bench. You also don't know exactly like how you want to run things with Hartenstein off the bench. So there had to be games, and there's going to have to be games moving forward to get you more used to what that looks like for the individual, like for Hartenstein himself. What does his preparation look like as a bench player? And then for Mark, like what's the best pattern? Like we have some like full blown patterns, right, of Shea playing every first quarter, every third quarter, and then half of the other two quarters. But what's the right pattern and rhythm for whenever you have a guy like Hartenstein coming off of your bench? How quickly do you want to go to that? Do you want to go to that quicker to where you play immediately with double bigs and then take Chet off shortly after that? Do you want to just go Hartenstein right for Chet and continue to play single bigs for a little bit? And so like I get the reasoning behind it, because it's not as though they're abandoning double bigs. I mean, Chet played, what was it, 15 minutes before he got hurt, and they still played double bigs in those 15 minutes. So obviously they're still going to try to get to that stuff. But it was interesting that they made the change in this game. But ultimately, I think that this 5 is your best 5 to start a basketball game, just because it makes those things that we talked about of your rotation and when you want to stagger your 2 centers, it makes that easier. Obviously, it's doable even if they both were to start, but it's just easier to stagger them if one's off the floor to start the game. And when you have a guy like Kaysen, you're able to set the tone the right way. Even in this game, the Thunder got off to a really good start, and they grew a big lead. I mean, they got into a double-digit lead like a quarter of the way through the first quarter. But a large part of that was just by simply getting stops and buying your offense enough time to get into a rhythm. Whereas if you start with a lesser defensive unit, or like a less proven defensive unit, that might not be able to happen for you to just do that, where you're able to suffocate teams' first few possessions. And the reason I think it's so important to put some of your best defenders out there, like a Caruso, like a Cason Wallace, is because it's hard to play catch up in that sense of, once you let a team get comfortable, once you let a team, see a couple go down, it's hard to put that toothpaste back in the tube, even though this team can do it because they're so talented on the defensive end. Why even give them that opportunity to settle in? And this Hawks team, for as good as they are offensively in the sense of pace and wanting to make it a track meet and outscore you, they never really looked comfortable on the offensive end.
Yeah, this Hawks team, I know they're talented, but I never felt like this game was in doubt. I know that there's a stretch there, especially the Thunder got up so big, and then they go on that run to end the first half, and they had a 14-0 run. The Thunder were up 69-50.
Nice.
They're up 69-50. And they go on a 14-0 run, and they get off the 69 right before halftime because Isaiah Hartenstein hits a tip shot and ends that 14-0 run. So it goes to 71-64. But even, during that run, even when it got to within 5 points, even though Chet may not have been coming back, we didn't know, but we saw him kind of like messing with his foot on the bench, and we knew there was a possibility he might not come back. Just never felt it was in doubt. Like, even with Caruso out, even with Chet possibly going out, even with that run, the Thunder were just a better team. And I didn't trust this Hawks team to put it all together tonight. But they had some nice runs.
Yeah, and I mean, you also felt good, right, about the Thunder being able to just do what it takes to get this win. Where could the defense have been better at times? Sure. But like the Thunder applied the intensity, they applied the fundamental things you need to do to win a basketball game when it was called for. And yes, they did coast a little bit at times, but it's an 82-game season. You're going to have to do that. So every Hawks run, it was cute to dwindle it down to single digits a couple times, but it never felt threatening just because of this team's ability to hold on to the lead. And they did so tonight with no lead changes, no ties, and a pure domination of the Hawks. And one of the bigger things was they were tied on the glass, 51 rebounds all, and they were a advantage by 8 turnovers with 19 turnovers to their 11 turnovers in Oklahoma City. So they created the more possessions, they got up more shots, and they're just the more talented team. And they were able to rest on that talent. Like, this is what you get a team that's good for, is that you can just out-athlete, out-talent, outscore teams and get you wins in the midst of a grueling 82-game season. Now, we talked about Chet going out in this game. Let's talk about what it looked like with Chet on the floor, what happened once he got hurt, and what we expect from that moving forward. Plus, Lu Dort really bounced back in this one to end what has been a down month on a high note after this. But first, I want to say right now, about our good friends over at FanDuel, go check out FanDuel right now, because when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in on the FanDuel action than America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can have the live betting throughout the game. So even if you miss opening tip-off, like this game, for example, tipped off at 6:30, you might not even be back home from work yet. But once you settled in and started to watch this game, you could have bet on a fourth quarter comeback. You could have bet on someone to go on a heater and stayed in the action, been engaged for bigger payouts. You can even combine live bets into the same game parlay. Right now, new FanDuel customers get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins just by visiting FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and the sportsbook partner of the NBA. And the NBA action never stops. It never, ever stops, not even tonight on Saturday as the Thunder are not in action. But you know who is, Brandon? The Houston Rockets are 5-point favorites over the Sacramento Kings. You can go bet on that at FanDuel.com. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Joined today by Brandan Rahbar at Brandan Rahbar on Twitter, dailythunder.com, and OKC Dream Team. Brandon, Chet Holmgren leaves this game at halftime with an ankle sprain, and we saw the ankle sprain happen, like right in the flow of the first quarter where he steps on Dyson Daniels' foot on the way to the rack. I just feel bad for Chet because anytime that you see Chet's name in parentheses an injury, people are going to freak out, and I just can't explain enough why you should not do that. Like this, yes, the injury is rookie season, the Liz Frank fracture. That is a fluke injury. The hip thing was scary because you broke your hip, but it ultimately was a fluke thing on a basketball play. And then this is not a fluke. It's not about his body. It's not about his makeup as a body. It's just what happens in the sport every single night. No matter how tall you are, short you are, thin you are, muscular you are, it happens to everybody that plays basketball to roll their ankle by stepping on somebody's foot or stepping on a cameraman like Jalen Williams did a couple times last year and this year. Like it just happens. And obviously it sucks for him because after fighting back from a massive injury, now you're taken away from the game due to something so minute of just like stepping on somebody's foot, something so mundane, I guess I should say, of driving to the basket. But ultimately, the fact that he was able to play through it until halftime has to make you feel good, right? That like this is not something that's going to be crazy long as perhaps maybe it was a little bit more precautionary of a game that felt like it was in hand, and you don't want to really push it if it started to give you any sort of issues at halftime.
Yeah, watching it in live time, of course, with Chet, there's ultra sensitivity with injuries, like you said, and well explained. And so I was even like carefully wording my tweet. I was like, I don't want to freak people out right away. Like, he played through it. He's still playing. He's still in the game. But, of course, I was a little surprised he kept playing just because, it was very obvious it was an ankle injury, but it looked like it might be one of those that, kind of swells up and you go out and maybe you just don't play the rest of the game. And the Thunder are very, cautious and conservative when it comes to injuries. So it makes sense at halftime. Maybe it started swelling up a little. Maybe it started hurting a little bit more and they just decided to be careful. We'll see, when he comes back. The Thunder have a back-to-back coming up on Sunday and Monday, and he's been resting on one of the nights of back-to-backs anyways. Curious to see if he plays either of those games or if he's out, for a few games. We'll see here. But like you said, you got to feel good that he played the rest of the half. Obviously, some adrenaline going. Obviously, Chet's a kind of guy. He said this. Marcus said this. Sam has said this, that wants to play no matter what. And after he missed all this time and he's finally back and he's playing well, I know he didn't want to go out. You could tell he didn't want to go out. So he wanted to keep playing. Maybe some of that's adrenaline, but, it just looks like an ankle sprain. Like you said, a typical NBA injury. And so, hopefully it's just the mundane ankle injury type. And he either comes back here in a couple games or just misses a few and we'll be back. We'll see. We'll see on that next injury report,
which will be sometime Saturday night. So make sure you stay tuned at Brandan Rahbar, at Rylan_Stiles on Twitter. But I think that the Thunder deserve a lot of credit. I know this was overall a ho-hum game against a middling East team on a bad conference. So being a middling East team is already pretty bad. But they lose Chet. They lose Isaiah Joe, he had a whole game and a half for Isaiah Joe, going 4 for 8 from 3 in 12 minutes of action. They lose those two guys. Already didn't have Caruso as he's resting tonight. And yet, in response to those losses, they went on a 17-0 run. And they grew their biggest lead of the night. Like how we know that this team is deep, but these are just moments that really illustrate not only their depth, but also their mental fortitude, in my opinion, of here's a team that did get dealt a bad hand. And as the Hawks went on a little bit of a run, and these guys were dropping like flies, it felt like the Thunder rallied around, went on their biggest run, and really salted the game away with that 17-0 run. Just what a performance from them to really get clicking.
Yeah, the 17-0 run was the highlight of the night for sure for the Thunder. Happened in just a few minutes time. And I mean, that was the game right there. When that happened, it's like, okay, the game's over. And I like that Lou Dort was such a big part of the run because he had such a great bounce back tonight. He was 6 of 11 from 3. He had 20 points. And coming into tonight, he was in a little bit of a slump. And I don't know if it's because, he didn't have his ring finger and pinky finger taped together anymore. So he got used to the mallet finger and now he's cured. And so he's like got to readjust to being healthy. But he was 2 of 16 over his last 16 coming in from 3, goes 6 for 11. And yeah, the thing with the Thunder and their depth, you just never know. Shea's going to get his 30. J-Dub's going to get about 20. If Chet's healthy, he's going to get 15 to 20. And it could be Isaiah Joe, it could be Aaron Wiggins, it could be Lou Dort, it could be any number of guys can pop off. So it was nice to see Lou have a bounce back game tonight, and he was that guy tonight. Although there were 6 guys in double digits. I thought Hartenstein had a really nice game. Joe, like you said before he got hurt. And then Wiggins just continues to score in double digits. He's just a double-digit guy now, I guess. He's 13 games in a row. Every February game, Wiggins has scored in double digits. So the Thunder other guys tonight, I thought played really well.
Yeah, I think that Lou Dort, coming into this game in the month of February, he was shooting 33% from 3. Not, on 5 attempts a game. Not a good line whatsoever, and not who he's been over the last few seasons. Even with that stretch in mind, for the whole season, he's still shooting 39% from 3. And we just told you that for the whole month, he shot 33% on 5 attempts a game. That's how good he was shooting before, that it only dipped his percentages that much. And like, this has been a constant trend for him where it's like, 39% last year, 39% this year. And he's really improved his efficiency. And you saw that night and day difference tonight for the offensive. When Lou Dort is hitting his shots, it just adds another element that makes this Thunder offense feel unstoppable at times, because who do you funnel the ball toward? Who do you try to leave alone? Who are you hoping shoots shots? If Lou Dort is burying them, you really don't have someone who you just are fine giving up the look to. And that's what's so good about this team whenever everything is clicking. And Lou Dort did that tonight. What an impressive game from him on both ends, but it just heightens each side of the ball for the Thunder whenever he's on it offensively.
Yeah, and he was tonight. It's his 3-point shooting. And when he can be that efficient, when he can take Trae Young, one of the best offensive players in the game, head to head and actually outscore him. Like, he held Trae to 19 points on pretty poor efficiency. And then he scores 20 himself on great efficiency. You got to like the Thunder's chances. So when Lou does that, and we've seen him do that time and time again this season. He had a slump coming into this game, but so many games he'll take on the best scorer on the other team and one of the best scorers in the NBA, and he might outscore the guy that night because his defense is that good. And the man is shooting 40% from 3 on the season. So, any given night he can go off for 20 himself while he keeps one of the best scorers in the NBA to under 20. So kind of vintage Lou Dort game tonight.
Yeah, Trae had 19 on 35% shooting. He didn't make his first field goal attempt until the third quarter because of how lethal this Thunder defense was. That was just an incredible display by Oklahoma City to get this win. But we've touched on it. Got to give a lot of props to Aaron Wiggins, Cason Wallace, Isaiah Joe's immaculate 12 minutes. Listen, fellas, we know how difficult it is to put up 12-minute numbers, and Joe made every single minute count in this game in Atlanta. We'll talk about that more coming up. We're back on the Lockdown Thunder podcast, on the Lockdown Podcast Network, your teams every day. We're talking to Brandan Rahbar at Brandan Rahbar on Twitter, dailythunder.com, about this Thunder win over Atlanta. Brandon, we've talked Dort bouncing back. We've talked the starting lineup changes, but one quick thing about that lineup changes was the bench production that it brought, which saw Isaiah Joe in 12 minutes put up 12 points. Isaiah Hartenstein put up 13 points. Wiggins put up 13 points. 3 bench scores were in double figures tonight. Oh, by the way, Kenneth Williams had 5 to go along with it. And then you got a 3 from Adam Flagler and a 3 from Jay Will. Shout out to those 2 guys off the bench. But Hartenstein coming off the bench for 13, 10, and 6 with 2 steals and a block. I thought that he was just really had an A game, and that was another example of the grit, I guess you could call it, of this Thunder team, because the plan going into it, you have to imagine if you have Hartenstein coming off the bench, like, can he still get close to 30 minutes? And in this game, he plays 27 minutes, which was kind of a fact of having to slide into that starting role because Chet went out, and he delivered, he answered the call, and he got it done on both ends. I thought that Hartenstein was really good tonight. Yeah,
Hartenstein was really good. Like, the double-double obviously pops out with the points and the boards, but to me, it's the playmaking. Again, the 6 assists in 27 minutes from a backup big man. We've talked so much throughout the season about the non-Shea minutes, the bench minutes, like the creation, the playmaking, like who's going to handle the ball, who's going to set the table. And obviously a lot of that goes to Dub. We think now that Chet's back, Chet's going to handle some of that. And we see that two-man lineup of Dub and Chet play so well together. But if Hart is going to come off the bench, if this is going to kind of shift rotations a little bit, and you got a man like Hartenstein who's 7 feet and, putting up double doubles and giving you 4, 5, 6 assists a night, it's such a big boost, I think, to the bench to have another guy that can kind of run the offense and look for guys and set the table for guys off the bench. And the reserves tonight, the bench tonight, all these guys tonight, like the Thunder shot 23 of 50 from 3 tonight, 46%. Obviously, that's easy math. But, you see it tonight. We've talked so much about like that Wolves loss and how the Thunder went cold. And yeah, there's shooting variance, but this Thunder team has been the best 3-point shooting team since January 1st, 2025. And it's nights like this that remind you, like, which one was the fluke? Was tonight 23 of 50 a fluke? Or was it that night where they went, 0 for the last 13 from 3 against the Wolves, the fluke? Like, the truth is always somewhere in the middle. I don't know. This Thunder team, though, they're kind of proving over and over again, like when this offense gets going and once they get more and more healthy and have their guys, they look really strong.
Yeah, and the truth being in the middle is something that we talk about on this show a lot. And so long as the truth is in the middle of, the 2 for 15 fourth quarter against Minnesota and this blistering performance, so long as it's in the middle of those two things, the Thunder are who we think they are, of this title contending, going to go to the finals type of team. If they can just be in the middle of those two things, much less, we always look at this from a glass half empty perspective about the Thunder shooting because their shooters haven't done it yet in the playoffs. What if this is the year that they do it, right? Like, no one's ever done it until they actually do it. If this is the year that the Thunder shoot well in the playoffs, then it could be one of the most dominating performances ever. If they shoot like they did on Monday, it will be a disastrous performance, like in the sense of, the scoreboard. So it's just, we have to wait and see and hurry up and wait to see what things look like. I will just say this too, around the NBA, a lot of you can kind of get dialed into just the Thunder and kind of myopic about what's happening in Oklahoma City. Second straight year that Boston blows a 20-point lead. They won a championship last year. They're still in prime position to do it this year. And they blew a 22-point lead to Cleveland at home today. So like, these blown leads do happen. It's almost harder in some ways to play from a big lead. It's like the old hockey saying that the most dangerous lead in hockey is a 2-goal lead. And you almost don't want to score that second goal. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens and how things shake out. But a lot of the indicators point positively. Most of them point positively for Oklahoma City. Really, the only thing I could see stopping them is just, they're so young, and we'll see if it actually stops them or not, because they've been able to buck all those trends right now. But ultimately, I think that you seriously just need to sit back and enjoy this season and let it be. As the Beatles would say, Brandon, let it be. Whatever comes of this, whether it's all of your hopes and dreams or a crushing postseason, like whatever happens, just let yourself enjoy one ride. Because I'm here to tell you, like the pressure and the anxiety and the weight of it all, it's only intensifying from this point forward. You're still in the infancy stages of growing whatever this becomes, and it's never going to feel better. It's never going to feel more jovial and more light at the end of the tunnel than it does right now. So just enjoy that fact, because the impending doom will always be there, but what will not always be there is the fact that no matter what happens this season, you get to say you have an incredibly bright future, because no matter if the Thunder go win a championship or if they don't, their future is still among the brightest in the NBA. And that's just a fact. So while that can be the case, win or lose, just enjoy it, because you look around the NBA, there's a lot of other teams that if they don't do something significant this year, they're feeling like it's over. And this is just the start, win, lose, or draw for Oklahoma City. And you've got to really enjoy that, Brandon.
Yeah, and this team is set up for long-term success. Like these guys, like SGA, Jada, Chet, they're going to be around long-term. They're going to have a lot of bites at the apple to contend and to try to win a title. But when you look at like the first era Thunder, I think a lot of the most fun was those early days, like ramping up to the success. It wasn't necessarily, for some fans, I don't think it was even the final season. Maybe it was the year before. Maybe it was that first playoff series against the Lakers. Like the ride, like getting there to contention and just, like you said, enjoying that ride, because this is a really fun team. They're incredibly talented. They could go win a title this year. They might not win a title this year. But I know that they're a lot of fun to watch and to cover and to root for. They're good guys. They're hardworking, and they have a lot of fun on the court, off the court. And I think that's good advice, Rylan.
Thank you, Brandon. I'm glad that you can see it that way. But Brandon, we covered this Hawks game to the best of our abilities. Fun fact, do you know who Chris Fisher's first game as a play-by-play man was for the Thunder, who it was against?
Well, I'm just going to take a stab in the dark here and say the Hawks.
It was the Hawks in the preseason of 2018. Thank you, Brandon, for getting that reference, because I asked Joe Mazzato this question, and he sits back and goes, I guess the New Zealand Breakers? Why would I bring up the New Zealand Breakers today, of all days? So thank you, Brandon. This is why we have the best pick and roll chemistry on this show and on OKC Dream Team, which you can go check out on Patreon with me, Joe Mazzato, Andrew Schleck, Brandan Rahbar, Brett Dawson, John Hamm, Michele Berra, a lot of great people over there on OKC Dream Team, and a lot of great people here on Locked On Thunder. So, in the Locked On Podcast Network. So until next time, be good and be good to one another.